So yeah, this is the second game of this blog post and the only one I put on YouTube. It's the game between Stockfish 6 versus Fat Fritz 2, and I'll let them play this opening here, which is the opening of my latest bullet game. And here I castled Queenshead, which is terrible. But okay, it was just a bullet game. I won it anyway, as you see above here. But okay, castles is probably one of the best moves here. 91. Bishop d6, knight d3. Bishop here. This bishop maybe wants to go to the king side, insert some pressure over there. But let's see what happens. So rook c1. Activating the rook, g5, gaining some space on the king side, trying to attack there, of course. a3, f4, and g4, locking down the king side. And now you see here this bishop here on g2 is probably pretty useless. Just looking at the stone here, there is no real sacrifice, nothing going on right there, but okay. Maybe this bishop becomes useful later on. For example, of the rook f2, I would have probably played something like this. a4, knight c5, rook f7, b4, a5, a4 attacking the queen, queen b2, knight back, and bishop f2. Now this bishop maybe finds a better diagonal over there. Okay, it's a playable position for both sides. Probably black is slightly better here. But okay, we have queen a2, and now this allows a little combination by Fat Fritz 2. It's not winning the game, but it's making things pretty easy there. And with the arrows and stuff, I point out the threat here. The point is this knight here on d3 is undefended, so that's why knight takes d4 is working here after pawn takes, bishop takes, and there is really no good way of defending the knight because the queen hits this pawn here with check and also would hit the knight, so there isn't really a good way of defending it. Although, well, anyway, you lose the rook there, so that's why knight here was played. And now taking the rook, knight takes. The other way of defending was probably queen there or rook there. Or rook there, probably not because of queen d4. But the knight would have to go back then, and then the rook falls anyway, so okay. I'm just gonna show it with arrows. Queen here, queen takes, knight there, and queen takes and bishop takes rook, and it's probably even worse than it in the game. So that's why here knight e5 was played, taking the rook, knight takes, bishop takes, pawn takes, queen g5 attacking the rook, rook c2 attacking b7, rook c8, rook takes b7, f4, and now queen d2 is one option, and queen b1 is another one. Queen b1 was chosen. Both are kind of playable. Black stands a little bit better, but white can probably hold this with both of those moves. G takes f4 is a pretty big blunder because of queen takes, and after queen here, this endgame is pretty bad because you can't really defend that pawn. If you go knight here, then a5 and you lose that pawn, and if you go after this one, you're probably winning it, but probably this pawn will be quicker and this would be losing for white. Also after, for example, rook here, rook takes pawn comes with an attack on the knight, and then you can probably defend this by attacking the a3 pawn or pushing the a pawn, And if rook here, you still take on d4, attack the knight, and then you can probably just bring the king over to f5, defend everything, and this should be winning for black. But okay, we have queen b1 and now queen g6, and here we have g takes, rook takes, and queen e1. This is the losing move in fact. Queen takes g6 looks kind of ugly, but after all this shuffling here, you give up the a pawn instead of the e6 pawn for the d pawn, and yeah, rook c7 a4. This is as far as I analyzed it, and Stockfish gives it as probably kind of equal, minus 0.12, so slightly better for black, but it should be a draw after all. But we have queen e1, and now there is a lot of shuffling going around. King h8, h5, trying to go h4, hitting the knight, so the knight goes back voluntarily, hitting the rook, rook back, and now queen here. And after queen takes b1, rook takes b1, we have h4, rook b6, going after e6, rook there, and here there is a little thing going on there, because you cannot really go after the a pawn, because rook here, rook takes pawn, loses due to rook b1 check, and now you have to block, and you will be mated soon there. Just bishop here, rook takes bishop, king there, and rook up delivers checkmate, because those squares are also covered by the pawns. And this file is also covered, so same applies after rook e6. But anyway, we have a4 here, and our rook e7, rook b1. Still, if you go there, you can't really take this because of rook here to there, and the same checkmate applies. So rook b1, clearing the not clearing, saving against any back rank issues. Rook c8, knight c1, rook c3, bishop there, rook infiltrates, and as you see there, black is extremely active and really winning here, but it takes a lot to convert this into a victory. Attacking the knight there, going back attacking the a pawn, going back attacking the knight, and now the king slides in. White can't do much, but going around. Now the knight is attacked again, bishop here, and a little bit of shuffling. Now the king comes in, and still a little bit of shuffling, and finally here, for example, if knight e2, then just rook there, rook here, and rook takes rook, bishop takes, king takes. All those squares are covered, and rook b4 coming to get one of those pawns, and black is already up one of them, so this should be winning. Also, black's king is much more active, so that's why bishop e2 was played, rook there, and finally this pawn was grabbed, attacking the knight, attacking the rook, rook here defending the g pawn, attacking a4, and now taking this, bishop there, defending the a pawn, rook back, check. And now it's still a little bit of shuffling going around here. The king is now in its own territory again. Rook here, bishop there, attacking the rook, rook here, check. The king goes back to g1, and now the king reactivates again, and this is nice because, yeah, there is this fork, d4 forking the pieces, so yeah, I'm not sure why this is not played immediately, but this is just cooler. King takes, for example, if you take the other rook, then this king's pawn ending with 4 pawns up for black. This is clearly winning, of course. That's why we have king h2. Still this fork comes, check. There are no useful discoveries, so the rook goes back. Now this rook goes forward again, and now the king goes here attacking both pieces. So the rook moves and now taking the knight. It's basically the same as before, but it's only 3 pawns now, and not that it matters. The d pawn is very far advanced, but it's a rook endgame. Stockfish preferred this, but you could probably resign it here. Nice little bridge here, by the way. Rook here attacking the pawn, also letting it go with check. Okay, the other possibility was just to go there, because of the rook here, check, king here, rook there, we would have the same block with the rook, but king f2 is just as potent. Rook here, king there, rook there, check. And yeah, this is pretty simple. Here the king just has to go up, then play that one, king has to go down, king here, and rook
Mate.
there is mate. Yes, so thanks for watching and see you next time. Ciao.